I knew things were going south when I walked into the server room Monday morning and heard silence instead of the usual hum of cooling fans. That room had been my second home for 8 years, the place where I kept the financial heartbeat of Southwest Construction Materials pumping. Without me, 8,500 construction workers across Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico don't get their paychecks. I'm Wade Miller, 50 years old, and I've been the senior database administrator here since this company was half its current size. Navy taught me discipline for 8 years before I got into IT, and I run the payroll backend for everything from concrete crews in Houston to crane operators in Phoenix. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest work, and I'm damn good at it. Let me tell you something about construction payroll. It's not like running numbers for some office workers. These guys work in the heat, in the cold, on weekends, through holidays. They climb 20 stories up on steel beams. They pour concrete in 110-degree weather. They work overtime when a storm hits and people need their power back. They deserve every penny they earn, and they deserve to get it on time. The system I maintain isn't some sleek, cloud-based wonder that the sales brochures promise. It's a beast built on legacy SQL databases, custom scripts, and 8 years of patches that I've applied with the precision you learn in the Navy. I know every workaround, every quirk, every potential failure point. When the prevailing wage laws changed in Arizona last year, I rewrote the calculation engine in 3 days. When OSHA updated their reporting requirements, I built the compliance module from scratch while my daughter Rachel called from college to check on me. You want to know how complex this stuff gets? Try calculating overtime for a crew that starts work in Texas on Monday, moves to a job site in New Mexico on Wednesday, then finishes the week in Arizona. Each state has different labor laws, different tax rates, different union rules. Then factor in equipment rental time, hazard pay for working near chemical storage, and federal prevailing wages for government contracts. The Arizona Prevailing Wage Database alone has 340 different job classifications with different rates depending on which county you're working in. Union contracts have overtime rules that would make a tax lawyer's head spin. You've got guys who get time and a half after 8 hours, double time after 12, but only if they're working on certain types of projects. Then you've got hazard pay that kicks in if they're working within 500 feet of chemical storage, but the rate changes based on what chemicals and how close they are. But corporate doesn't see it that way. They see an old system that needs modernizing, and they see me as the guy standing in the way of progress. That's where Spencer Rodriguez comes in. Spencer is the VP of Operations, and more importantly, he's the chairman's son. 3 months ago, our company got acquired by Rodriguez Family Holdings, a construction conglomerate that owns everything from cement plants to equipment rental chains. Spencer came in with a mandate to streamline operations and eliminate redundancies. Translation, fire expensive people and replace them with cheaper solutions. I'd met Spencer a few times in passing. He's one of those guys who wears a suit to construction sites and stays in his air-conditioned truck, while real workers sweat in the sun. Got his MBA from some prestigious school and thinks every business problem can be solved with a PowerPoint presentation and buzzwords like digital transformation and operational efficiency. He's never spent a day on a construction site, never had to calculate overtime for a crew working emergency storm repairs, never had to explain to a single father why his paycheck is late because the system crashed. The meeting happened on a Tuesday. Spencer called me into his office along with Jennifer Williams from HR. Jennifer's been here almost as long as I have, but she's always been more worried about protecting the company than protecting the employees. She's got that nervous energy of someone who knows bad news is coming but has to deliver it with a smile. Spencer's office looked like something out of a corporate magazine. Glass desk, leather chairs, and a view of the equipment yard that he probably never actually looked at. He was tapping on his tablet when I walked in, making me wait while he finished whatever earth-shattering task required his immediate attention. "Wade," Spencer said, not bothering to look up from his tablet, "we're structuring the IT department, moving to a more agile, cost-effective model." I sat down in the chair across from his desk. What does that mean for payroll operations? That's where it gets exciting. Spencer finally looked at me, flashing the kind of smile that car salesmen practice in mirrors. "I want you to meet my niece, Nicole. She just finished her MBA, and she's built an incredible model that's going to revolutionize how we handle payroll. Here's the thing about family businesses. Competence takes a backseat to bloodlines every time. I'd seen it before in other companies, but I thought our operation was too critical for that kind of nonsense. I was wrong. Nicole Rodriguez walked in like she owned the place, which technically through family connections, she kind of did. She was 25, wearing a business suit that probably cost more than most of our workers make in a week, and carrying an iPad like it was the holy grail of business solutions. "Hi, Wade," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "I've been reviewing your processes, very thorough, but also very manual. I think we can do better." The way she said manual made it sound like I was still using an abacus and stone tablets. "Better how?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew where this was heading. Nicole set her iPad on Spencer's glass desk and started swiping through screens with the confidence of someone who'd never seen a real system crash and burn. "I've built a comprehensive payroll solution in Excel. It's cloud-based, it's intuitive, and it can handle all the calculations you're currently doing with those old SQL databases." I stared at her for a long moment. Excel. You want to run payroll for 8,500 construction workers with a spreadsheet? Not just any spreadsheet, Nicole said, getting a little defensive. "This has pivot tables, conditional formatting, automated macros. It's like having a database, but user-friendly. User-friendly." That's what they always say when they want to replace something that actually works with something that looks prettier. I've been in this business long enough to know that user-friendly usually means it works great until it doesn't, and then you're screwed because nobody understands what's happening under the hood. I looked at Spencer, hoping to see some sign that he understood how insane this was. "Is this a joke? It's innovation, Wade," Spencer said, leaning back in his leather chair. "Nicole's model can reduce processing time by 60% and cut our IT overhead significantly." There it was, cut our IT overhead. What they meant was they could fire me and pay Nicole a fraction of my salary. I'd seen this movie before at other companies. Young MBA comes in, promises the world with some half-baked solution. Older employee gets shown the door, and then 6 months later, they're begging the old guy to come back and fix the mess. "The payroll run is Friday," I said, keeping my voice level. "Today is Tuesday. If you're planning to switch systems, you need to understand what you're dealing with." I started counting off on my fingers. We have prevailing wage calculations for government contracts. Union versus non-union differentials that change based on the type of project and how many consecutive days a crew has worked. Equipment rental tracking that has to be cross-referenced with GPS data. OSHA compliance reporting. Multi-state tax withholdings where a guy can start the week in Texas and finish it in New Mexico. Nicole was nodding along like she was following, but I could see her eyes glazing over. She thought she understood because she'd read about payroll in some textbook. "I've accounted for all of that," she interrupted. "My model includes lookup tables for all state regulations and automated tax calculations." Lookup tables. I almost laughed. The union contracts alone have overtime rules that change based on what type of work you're doing, how many hours you've already worked that day, what day of the week it is, and whether you're within a certain distance of hazardous materials. Nicole's lookup table would need about 50,000 rows just to cover the basic scenarios. "Nicole," I said, trying to keep the condescension out of my voice. "Have you ever calculated prevailing wages for a federal highway project?" "I've studied the regulations," she said. "Studying and doing are two different things. You know what happens when you get prevailing wages wrong on a federal contract? The Department of Labor comes in and audits everything. They can fine us for every hour that was calculated incorrectly going back 3 years. Spencer waved his hand dismissively. "We'll have compliance reviews." Nicole's model includes error checking. Error checking in Excel, right? Like conditional formatting was going to catch it when some crew foreman in El Paso enters his time wrong, and Nicole's lookup formula returns the wrong wage rate for 40 guys working a government job. "Wade," Jennifer finally spoke up, "we'll need you to provide Nicole with all the necessary passwords and documentation for a smooth transition." "Documentation?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Most of the critical processes are in custom scripts I wrote over the past 8 years. The real knowledge isn't documented anywhere. It's in my head. That's the thing about systems that actually work in the real world. They're not built from some textbook. They're built by people who've been doing the job long enough to know where all the bodies are buried. I know that the time clock system in the Phoenix warehouse has a glitch where it sometimes double stamps entries after 11 p.m., but only on Wednesdays and only if the network load is high. I know that the union contract for the concrete crews has a clause about meal breaks that nobody else remembers, but if you don't account for it, the guys don't get their meal penalty pay. Nicole doesn't know any of that. She's got her pretty spreadsheet with its color-coded cells and its fancy formulas, but she's never had to explain to a crane operator why he's showing up as earning less than minimum wage because some calculation went sideways. Then we'll need you to document everything before you go, Spencer said, and that's when I knew for sure they'd already made their decision. They weren't asking for my input or trying to understand why their plan was doomed. They were giving me my walking papers and expecting me to train my replacement. When's my last day? I asked. Friday, Spencer said, after the payroll run. We want to make sure there's a smooth transition. I thought about Scott Davis, the 26-year-old junior admin I'd been mentoring for the past 2 years. Kid had real potential, reminded me of myself when I first got into this business. He was smart, eager to learn, and actually understood that behind every payroll number was a real person trying to pay rent and buy groceries. What about Scott? He's being reassigned as well. Nicole jumped in. I'll be handling all database administration going forward. So they were cleaning house completely. Not just getting rid of the expensive old guy, but anyone who might know enough to question their brilliant new system. And if the transition isn't smooth, I asked. It will be, Nicole said with the confidence of someone who'd never been responsible for other people's livelihoods. I've tested my model extensively on what data, sample data from the HR system plus some theoretical scenarios. Sample data, theoretical scenarios. She'd tested her revolutionary payroll solution on make-believe numbers. It was like testing a race car by driving it around a parking lot at 5 Memley Payage and then assuming it would handle the Daytona 500. I stood up, my knees popping the way they do when you've been sitting too long or when you're about to make a decision you know you'll either regret or celebrate. All right then, I guess we'll see how it goes. That's the spirit, Spencer said, already looking back at his tablet. Wade, Jennifer added, Patricia will have your severance paperwork ready by end of business. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back to Nicole. One piece of advice. She looked up from her iPad, probably expecting some technical tip about database connections or file formats. When the system crashes, I said, and it will crash, don't panic. Just remember that 8,500 people are counting on their paychecks to pay rent and buy groceries. That might help you prioritize. The look on her face told me she still didn't get it. She thought this was just numbers on a screen. She had no idea she was about to be responsible for people's lives. I didn't argue anymore. I didn't try to explain why Nicole's approach was doomed to fail worse than a paper airplane in a tornado. Sometimes the best teacher is experience, and Nicole was about to get an education that no MBA program could provide. The next 3 days were like watching a slow-motion car crash. I spent Wednesday and Thursday doing exactly what they asked, documenting everything I could think of, creating user guides and writing step-by-step instructions. But here's the thing about complex systems that have evolved over 8 years. You can't document institutional knowledge. You can't write down the gut feeling you get when something doesn't look right or the instinct that tells you to double-check a calculation because it seems off by just enough to matter. Nicole shadowed me those 2 days, taking notes on her iPad and asking questions that showed she had no clue what she was getting into. Why do you manually verify the Arizona wage classifications? She asked Wednesday morning as I ran through the pre-payroll checks. Because the state database has been corrupted since 2019, I explained. It shows the right wage rates, but about 3% of the job classifications return wrong county codes. If you don't catch it, guys, working in Phoenix get paid Tucson rates, which is about $4 an hour difference. Can't we just fix the database? It's a state system. We don't control it. We just have to work around it. She made a note on her iPad. I could see her typing fix state database issue like that was something she could handle with a phone call. What about this manual override for the concrete crews? Nicole asked, watching me adjust overtime calculations for a Phoenix job site. Union contract has a clause about consecutive days worked, I said. After 6 straight days, even if it's across different projects, overtime kicks in at double time instead of time and a half. The system doesn't track that automatically because the jobs are coded differently. Seems like something we could automate with better data architecture. Better data architecture. That's MBA speak for I don't understand why this is complicated, so it must be poorly designed. Thursday afternoon, Nicole was feeling confident enough to start importing real data into her Excel model. I watched her upload the raw time files from our 35 job sites across 3 states. The spreadsheet immediately started lagging. It's just loading, she said, clicking refresh repeatedly while Excel churned through 8,500 employee records. But I could see what was happening. Her lookup formulas were hitting circular references because she didn't understand how prevailing wage calculations cascade. When you've got federal, state, and local wage requirements that can all apply to the same job, you can't just use a simple VLOOKUP. You need conditional logic that checks multiple criteria in a specific order. Nicole, I said carefully, you might want to test that on a smaller dataset first. It'll be fine, she replied, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping into her voice as Excel's memory usage spiked and the program started freezing. The file size is getting pretty large, she muttered, watching the spinning wheel of death appear on her screen. How large? I asked. About 340 megabytes. I whistled low. Excel starts having problems around 100 megabytes, right? It's a powerful program, Nicole said, but she was starting to sweat a little. By Thursday evening, Nicole had managed to crash her laptop twice trying to run calculations on the full dataset. Each time, she had to reload everything from scratch because she hadn't set up proper backup procedures. Maybe we should stick with a smaller test group for Friday, I suggested as she rebooted her machine for the third time. No, I've got this, Nicole said, though her voice was getting tighter. I just need to optimize the formulas. Friday morning came and it was time for the official handoff. Nicole showed up early with her laptop and the kind of nervous energy you see in rookie drivers before their first NASCAR race. I gathered my personal items while she set up at my workstation. Coffee mug that said, "World's Okayest Database Admin," photo of my daughter Rachel from her engineering graduation, and a bottle of bourbon I kept for emergencies. Something told me they'd be needing it more than I would. Ready to make history? Nicole asked, trying to sound confident. The bank cutoff for direct deposits is noon, I reminded her. After that, people don't get paid until Monday. She nodded, already focused on her screen where Excel was grinding through the payroll data like a wood chipper trying to process a telephone pole. I started to leave, then stopped. Nicole, one more thing. When this goes sideways, and it will go sideways, don't try to fix it by running the calculations again. Each time you reprocess, you create duplicate entries in the system. Fix the problem first, then rerun. She wasn't really listening. She was staring at her screen where the spreadsheet was showing error values in about half the cells. Randy Foster walked me to the security desk where Jennifer was waiting with my severance paperwork. Randy's a good guy, ex-Marine who understands the value of knowing your job inside and out. Sorry to see you go, Wade, Randy said as I signed the documents. This doesn't feel right. It's just business, Randy. Bad business, but business nonetheless. I drove home in my pickup truck, windows down, country music on the radio. I should have been angry, but mostly I felt like I was watching a disaster movie where the asteroid is going to hit, but the characters haven't figured it out yet. My phone started buzzing around 10:30 a.m., text from Cody Walsh, one of our Phoenix crews. Wade, this payroll report shows I worked negative hours last week. Then another text from Curtis Ramirez in El Paso. According to this, I make $84.70 an hour as a concrete finisher. I wish. By 11 a.m., my phone was lighting up like Christmas morning. Guys from all over our territory were seeing their pay stubs in the employee portal, and nothing made sense. Employee ID numbers were getting mixed up with social security numbers. Job classifications were scrambled. Crane operators were showing up as office clerks. Concrete finishers were listed as executives. The funniest one came from a foreman in Albuquerque. Wade, my pay stub says I worked 2,847 hours last week, and my net pay is $12,000. Did I rob the company, or did the company rob me? I could picture exactly what had happened during the data import. Nicole had mixed up the column headers. Employee ID numbers were being used as hours worked, and hours worked were being treated as pay rates. Excel was trying to calculate wages using social security numbers as multipliers.